In Breathoffire, Zog, known as Zogon in Japanese, embodies the quintessential dark overlord, a power-hungry, sadistic tyrant who revels in destruction and rules through fear. He fits neatly into the trope of evil for evil's sake antagonist, a common archetype in 16-bit RPGs. His motivations are simple: dominate, destroy, and ascend to godhood at any cost. Yet, while Zog may seem like a one-dimensional villain by modern standards, his characterization is deeply emblematic of the dramatic, larger-than-life antagonists that define 1990s video games. Zog's lack of subtlety is also his strength. He is a pure, undiluted antagonist designed to be hated and feared, making his eventual downfall all the more satisfying. While later generations of RPGs would favor complex villains with sympathetic motives, Zog represents an era where evil was bold, dramatic, and unrelenting, a dark god who existed solely to be toppled by the hero's resolve. During this era, villains were often designed to be immediately imposing, relying on sheer presence rather than nuanced backstories. Zog excels in this regard. His towering, monstrous design, his godlike status, and his willingness to betray even his own followers make him an unforgettable force of malice. Unlike later RPG antagonists who may have been humanized through tragic pasts or moral ambiguity, Zog's evil is unapologetic and grandiose, a reflection of the storytelling trends of the time. Games like Final Fantasy VI with Kefka and Secret of Mana with Thanatos featured similar villains, flamboyant, over the top, and dripping with theatrical menace. Zog fits right into this pantheon, serving as both a final obstacle and a symbolic manifestation of the game's central conflict, the struggle between hope and annihilation. What makes Zog particularly compelling, however, is how his archetypal evil serves the narrative. He is not just a villain, he is the living embodiment of decay, a force that is already won by the time the game begins. The light dragons are nearly extinct. Kingdoms are in ruins. Despair has taken root, all because of him. His dominance is so absolute, Ryu's journey feels like a desperate last stand, rather than a conventional hero's quest. This approach to villainy was a hallmark of the 90s RPGs, where evil was often portrayed as an overwhelming, almost elemental force that required unity and perseverance to overcome. Moving on to his role in the story, Zog orchestrated a near annihilation of the Light Dragon clan, a once mighty race that served as the world's protectors. His campaign of devastation began with the corruption of the Dark Dragons, twisting them into instruments of his will, and turning them against the Light Dragon Brethren due to Miria's intervention. Through deception and overwhelming force, Zog systematically hunted down the Light Dragons, slaughtering them to near extinction, and ensuring that their power, a once balancing force against his own, was all but erased from the world. Zog's only respect is for power, and like all unchecked power, it consumed him. With the Light Dragons decimated, Zog's dominion expanded unchecked, as no remaining force could oppose his tyranny. The few survivors, like Ryu's ancestor, were forced into hiding, their lineage fading into myth. Meanwhile, Zog's influence seeped into the world's kingdoms, either through direct conquest or by manipulating mortal rulers, plunging civilizations into chaos and despair. His reign was marked by ruin, as entire regions fell under his shadow, their people enslaved or slaughtered in his name. The Dark Dragons, now as enforcers, spread his will across the land, ensuring that any resistance was crushed before it could rise. By the time of Breathoffire, Zog's dominance seemed absolute, until the last descendant of the Light Dragons, Ryu, emerged to challenge him, reigniting the ancient war between destruction and hope. Zog's near-total victory over the Light Dragons was not just a military conquest, but a metaphysical shift of the world's balance, leaving darkness as the reigning power until it was the prophesied hero who could restore it. As the tyrannical ruler of Skand, Zog ruled with an iron fist, imposing his will through fear, brutality, and ruthless subjugation. His reign was marked by a relentless conquest, as he sought to expand his empire through sheer force, crushing any who dared oppose him. However, his merciless methods and utter disregard for loyalty bred deep resentment, even among his own forces. Many of his generals, once fiercely loyal, grew disillusioned as Zog's cruelty extended beyond enemies to his own people, executing subordinates for minor failures, sacrificing entire battalions for tactical advantage, and ruling through terror rather than respect. His paranoia led to purges within his own ranks, as he saw betrayal in every shadow, further alienating those who fought for him. The final breaking point came when Zog, in pursuit of his godlike power, abandoned all pretense of mortal rule, discarding Scan's sovereignty in favor of his true goal, becoming a god of destruction. This betrayal of his empire eventually turned even his most devoted warlords against him, as they realized they were nothing more than pawns in his apocalyptic ambitions. Former generals and devas, now branded traitors, either fled to resist him or were slaughtered in his ascension to divine power. By the time of Breathoffire, Zog no longer had true allies left, only fearful servants, vengeful survivors, and those who would ultimately unite under Ryu to bring his reign of annihilation to an end. His downfall was not just the result of external enemies, but the inevitable consequence of his own tyranny, as even the most ruthless rulers cannot maintain power when they burn every bridge behind them. Jade's betrayal of Zog was the inevitable culmination of Zog's insatiable greed and his disregard for loyalty, proving that even the most devoted servants will turn against a master who sees them as expendable. As one of Zog's most powerful generals, Jade had once fought ruthlessly in his name, believing in the strength and vision of his emperor. However, as Zog's ambitions spiraled beyond mere conquest into outright deification, his cruelty grew unchecked. He treated his subordinates as mere tools, disposing of them without hesitation, sacrificing entire legions for his gain, and ruling through terror rather than respect. Jade, despite her loyalty, was no exception. When Zog's quest for godhood led him to discard even his empire, Scanned, towards the end of the game, Jade realized that she, too, was nothing more than a stepping stone in his path to power. His greed had stripped away any pretense of a mutual benefit, leaving only exploitation in its wake. Recognizing that Zog would eventually cast her aside, just as he had with countless others, Jade chose survival over blind allegiance. Her betrayal was not just an act of defiance, but a necessary escape from a ruler who would have consumed even his most loyal followers in a ravenous hunger for dominance. In the end, Zog's downfall was not sealed just by external enemies alone, but by the fractures within his own ranks, fractures created by his unrelenting avarice. Jade's defection symbolized the inevitable collapse of the empire built on nothing but fear rather than trust, proving that no tyrant, no matter how powerful, can sustain their rule when they sacrifice all who serve them. Zog serves as the ultimate dark mirror to Ryu and his party in Breath of Fire, both thematically and mechanically embodying the twisted reflection of everything the heroes stand for. Where Ryu is the last descendant of a nearly extinct light dragon clan, a lineage of noble protectors, Zog is the self-proclaimed god of destruction, a being of pure annihilation who eradicated the light dragons to cement his own dominance. Their very origins pit them against each other in a battle of restoration versus ruin, with Ryu's journey to reclaim his heritage directly opposing Zog's campaign to erase it. This dichotomy extends beyond their backstories into the roles of the narrative. Ryu gathers a band of outcasts, each with their own personal stakes in overthrowing Zog's tyranny, while Zog commands an empire built on fear, only to discard his own followers when they outlive their usefulness. Where Ryu's team grows stronger through their camaraderie and shared purpose, Zog's forces fracture under his cruelty, culminating in betrayals like Jade's. Their conflict is not just of a clash between individuals, but of ideologies. Unity versus domination, hope versus despair. This mirroring is further reinforced by Zog's boss fight mechanics, which directly contrast the player's own strategies throughout the game. Ryu's party relies on balanced teamwork, healers, damage dealers, and support to overcome challenges, but Zog is a solitary force of raw power, reflecting his own hubris and isolation. Where the player must carefully manage resources, Zog has no such limitations, attacking relentlessly with devastating multi-hit strikes that mimic an overwhelming oppression of his rule. Yet, for all of his strength, he lacks adaptability. His moveset, while brutal, is predictable, much like his rule, which crumbles due to his inability to inspire true loyalty. Meanwhile, Ryu's ability to transform into increasingly powerful dragons mirrors Zog's own draconic might. But where Zog's power is stagnant, Ryu's grows beyond the bonds he forges. The fight becomes a test of endurance, pushing the player to use every tool at their disposal. Just as Ryu's journey requires him to unite every ally against a seemingly insurmountable foe, even their visual designs emphasize this duality. Ryu, as the protagonist, is often depicted with bright heroic colors, blues, and whites that evoke his lineage as a light dragon. Zog, in contrast, is a monstrous, hulking figure shrouded in darkness, his form radiating menace. His very presence corrupts the battlefield, much like how his influence has poisoned the world. Yet, in the end, his solitary nature is his undoing. Where Ryu is resurrected by his friends after falling in battle, a key story moment, Zog has no one to save him. His isolation is his weakness. The battle against him is not just a test of strength, but a narrative culmination, proving that the collective will of the oppressed can topple even a godlike tyrant. In this way, Zog is more than just one of the last bosses. He is the dark antithesis of Ryu's heroism, a cautionary figure whose strength without compassion leads him to his ruin. His defeat is not just the end of a villain, but a triumph of unity over tyranny, echoing Breathofire's core themes of resilience and solidarity. Every mechanic of his fight, every detail of his character, reinforces this contrast, making his role as Ryu's shadow one of the most compelling aspects of the game's narrative and design. Zog, while a relatively straightforward villain by modern standards, served his role effectively as the dark antithesis to Ryu and the oppressive force deriving Breathofire's narrative. His unrelenting cruelty and godlike presence set a strong foundation for the series' recurring themes of light versus darkness, heritage versus destruction. Later entries would refine this archetype, introducing a more nuanced and tragic figure like Breathofire 2's Rei or Breathofire 3's Tipo. Villains who expanded on the dark mirror concept, but with deeper motivations and emotional weight. Yet Zog's legacy remains important as the series' first true embodiment of the apocalyptic tyranny, proving that even a seemingly simple villain could leave a lasting impact. For a debut title, Breathofire established a compelling dynamic between hero and antagonist, one that future games would build upon, making Zog a fitting, if primitive, blueprint for the darker and more complex foes that followed. Thank you, dear viewer, for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment. Tell me, what do you think of Zog, and what would you like to see in the next video? Goodbye.